Hello you. It's me. And I'm sorry I didn't get this out sooner, but I've been working a lot. Anyway, I saw this little video clip from Mushkin Mama. And it's not a very long clip. It's just Rod rambling to somebody. I don't even care who it was. But he is out there asking these questions that haters just aren't asking or aren't answering. And my first thought, honestly, was, Rod, you should be answering these questions yourself. And you know how you could have done that? Is if, I don't know, maybe you stayed in Gypsy's life, kept in contact with her mother, and kept up to date on things. You know, shocker. I know that's a crazy thing to suggest, but, you know, maybe if you'd been a dad to Gypsy, these questions would already be answered for you. But either you're just, in my opinion, my belief, my thoughts, my feelings, either he's just stupid or he doesn't care. Or he didn't care and now he's pretending to. Those are my thoughts. You know, you don't know what's happening with your child. That's on you. It's not on the child. Gypsy at one time was a child. You can't hold a child responsible for everything. For a few things. But they're children. You're supposed to teach them and teach them the right way to do things. And Rod apparently wasn't there to do that. But it's okay that his daughter murdered her mother. It's fine. But he's going to ask the haters a bunch of questions. And the sad part is, I don't call myself a hater. I just like truth. And I want Gypsy to, tell the truth and do something about it. Whatever. Anyway. And I want other people to know what the truth is. You know. Apparently Rod doesn't know the truth, nor has he tried to know the truth. But let's go over the questions that he personally asked. Excuse me just for a moment. My cat Zoe really is playful. Okay. Okay, let's go over some of these questions. First question. Why was Gypsy in a wheelchair since about the age of 5 or 6. Now, unfortunately, the only person we can ask this of that is still alive and kicking is Gypsy. But if we piece together what we know with what we suspect, we are aware that Gypsy had a surgery that temporarily made her legs numb. She couldn't feel them. Okay? And the doctors didn't know if that was permanent or if it would just go away on its own. Apparently this happened from a seizure during the surgery. Okay. So, and Gypsy had said herself that when she started to feel in her legs again, she didn't tell her mother because she didn't think her mother would love her anymore. Okay. So she was in a wheelchair at 5 or 6 because of that. And also because she had weak muscles. This is from what I understand from reading, etc. Is her muscles were weak, they were underdeveloped, and she would get tired very easily. Now, was she forced to be in a wheelchair all the time? Some people say yes. But we've seen the videos of her, sitting on the floor looking at other kids. I think it was some kind of cheerleading thing or something. Maybe she was pretending she couldn't stand up. Maybe she was tired. And that's part of because of the fact that she had not a lot of muscles, not a lot of strength in her legs. But we saw her in several pictures and little home movies and things where she's kind of on the floor, kind of, dragging her legs around or whatever. But she wasn't always in the wheelchair. She might have always played that she couldn't move, but that wasn't just from Dee Dee. That was also from Gypsy, who pretended she couldn't move. Okay, so, but yeah, the whole point of the wheelchair was, I believe, was because her muscles were so weak that she would get tired really easily and need to sit down. So they had a wheelchair for her. That's what I understood it to be. And I thought this was at a time where Rod was around, when they were still in Louisiana. So why can't he answer that question? Doesn't he know? Next question. Why was there a biopsy done? Because they wanted to see if Gypsy had muscular dystrophy. Because her muscles were so weak. That's why. Simple reason. That's it. They had to test it to see if that's what she had, if that's what was causing her problems. Because at the time of testing, they didn't know what was wrong with her. They knew it was some kind of chromosome thing, but they didn't know what it was specifically. Muscular dystrophy is from what I understand, part of a chromosome abnormality. That's why they tested her. Next question. Why did they remove salivary glands? Because if you read in the documentation, her medical records, it said that she would produce an abundance of saliva, which made it hard for her to swallow, which made it hard for her to eat properly. And they did a few different things using Botox as one of those main things to try to curtail the problem, but it didn't work. So they didn't take all of her salivary glands. They took some of them out so that it would prevent her from all the drooling and all the problems that she was having with swallowing and eating. If you read the documents, her medical records, it talks about it very specifically. I've seen it. I've seen it on other channels. They've shown proof of it. So what is he talking about? He keeps saying that all the haters need to read what really happened. Well, we did. It's right there. We saw what it said. Why doesn't he see it? He's so frustrating. Anyway, next thing. What about the forged birth certificate? All right. Well, what we know now and what we suspect is it's very possible that Dee Dee changed the birth certificate or forged the birth, whatever. Changed her birth date so that she would be younger, so that she could get more assistance. You know, from like children's hospitals, things like that. That's why. Now, is that fraud? Yes. Dee Dee did do that, I believe. But I believe it was for good reasons, because she knew she couldn't do all of this on her own. She needed help. And the best way to do it was to make Gypsy younger so that she could be there longer until they figured out what was wrong with her, which I can almost understand. Now, I don't like doing things that are illegal, but I feel like Dee Dee was desperate and really needed the assistance. That's what I believe. I don't think she did it just out of malice and laugh, ha ha ha, they think you're younger and you're not. You know, I don't think that's what it was. I think it's because she wanted the assistance that came with it. That's it. And Does that make her a good mother? Not necessarily. But I understand where she was coming from if that was the reason why she did it. And I think it is. Because she wanted to keep getting Gypsy that help that she needed until they could figure out what was wrong with her. Because when she was a kid, they didn't know. Excuse me. They had no idea. They knew it was some kind of chromosomal thing, but they didn't even discover what Gypsy had until 2008. And then she was diagnosed in 2011 when she was 21 years old. 20 years old. Well, she was an adult. So Gypsy wanted to keep up the ruse, or not Gypsy, Dee Dee wanted to keep up the ruse to help her as best she could until they could figure out what was wrong with her. That's it. Now, does that make Dee Dee a good mom? I don't know. I don't think it was a good idea for her to commit fraud. On the other hand, she did it for the benefit of Gypsy, not for the benefit of herself. That, I think, that's my opinion. I think that she did all these things to benefit Gypsy, to give Gypsy everything that she could, because she knew her baby was sick and she was trying to give her everything that she could, honestly, just in case, because she didn't know. She didn't know. And the fraud that she did with like the wish, Make-A-Wish and all that, she used the term muscular dystrophy. I don't know when she used that, when they suspected that's what it was, or if she knew it wasn't. But how do you tell someone, oh, by the way, my child is really sick, but they don't know what it is? Do you think Make-A-Wish is going to listen to that? And I'm not making excuses for Dee Dee, but I believe that's why she said things like muscular dystrophy or cancer. I don't know if Gypsy ever had cancer or anything like that, but I can understand why she said that if she wanted to get some benefits from these foundations, because they're not going to just give away stuff because your mom says you're sick. Do you know what I mean? So, again, not excusing it, but she had to say something, I suppose. I don't know. Does that make her a good mother? I don't know. I can't answer that. To me, it just seems like a desperate woman trying really hard to figure out why her kid is sick. And in the meantime, if the kid isn't going to have a long life, you want to give that kid as much fun, nice stuff as you can. You know, make their life meaningful for the short period of time that they are alive, because I don't think Dee Dee knew. She knew her kid was sick, that's it. But they couldn't give her answers as to with what. So, to me, it just screams somebody desperate and trying to do everything on their own. Which makes me turn to Rod. Were you a good dad, Rod? How are you at being a father to Gypsy? If you can't answer any of these questions, but I, as some stranger who has only done any kind of research on your daughter for like a year and a half, 2 years, you know, I saw the Dr. Phil thing. That was pretty much it that I knew about Gypsy until last year. But why do I know what her medical records stated and you don't? Have you even looked? What kind of dad are you? It doesn't sound like you're a very good dad. And we all have heard about how you cheated on Christy with the cookie lady as well as a bunch of other people, and how Gypsy so inappropriately was applauding you and saying, go for it, pimp daddy, or whatever the fuck she called him. It's so gross. Anyway, the last thing he said was that Gypsy was helpless, which obviously she wasn't, because by the time that Gypsy was 23, she wasn't going to the hospital all the time. They knew what was wrong with her. They did everything they could to help her. She wasn't going to the hospital except, I guess, to change out the feeding tube thing. That's it. She wasn't going in and out of the hospital all the time anymore. They did all the sleep studies, and they did the biopsy, and they did what they could to correct her eyes so that she could see. And, those are the things that they did. Those were the surgeries. There was only 4. Gypsy herself laid them out in her own book. 4 surgeries. That was it. So what are they talking about? What is Rod talking about? How was she helpless? She was on the computer. She used the phone. She ran away to go see Dan in the hospital. She had the ability to leave. She had left on a few occasions, at least that we know of. There probably were more. She wasn't stuck in the wheelchair. She was doing it of her own accord without a wheelchair. People saw her without the wheelchair. Why didn't she just leave? She wasn't helpless. Yes, there might have been some grooming there. Dee Dee telling her, okay, you gotta be sick. Remember, you have cancer or whatever it is. Yes, that Dee Dee coached her, I'm sure. But I'm sure Gypsy understood it. She knew what was going on. Now, this is something maybe she'd done her whole life. Yeah, it might have been hard to break, but she already broke it. She already left the house of her own accord. She already, quote unquote, ran away. Whatever she did, she already did that. Why didn't she run to her dad's and say, look, can you help me? I'm struggling here. Or ran to a neighbor or ran to the police. She could have done any of those things. But that's not what Gypsy wanted to do. Gypsy thought she could get rid of her mother and then live in the house on her own. She's pretty clueless because remember, her mother, who was so abusive, took care of everything to the point where all Gypsy had to do was exist. That's what Gypsy said. Okay? It's such a horrible mother. Ridiculous. It's all ridiculous. So why doesn't Rod know any of this? Is he purposely sticking his head under the sand? Is he just stupid? What's wrong with him? And then the very last thing Rod says is that all the haters are jealous. Jealous of what? What are we jealous of? A woman who was sick as a child, who had a mother devote her time, all of her time, to making sure that she got healthy, that she stayed healthy, and that she got to do fun things because they didn't know if she was going to live past 18. All right. It would be nice to have a mother that was that dedicated. Yes. Am I jealous? No. What am I? Am I jealous of Rod? Who asks these really basic questions that I, as a novice, who doesn't even know his daughter, knows more than he does? Would I be jealous of having a father like that? No. Would I be jealous of Christy, who, got a side eye on her sometimes too, and I don't even think she likes Gypsy. She'll play in public and be kind, but I don't think she likes Gypsy. I wouldn't like her either. She's a selfish, spoiled brat, first and foremost. And she's a murderer too, by the way, which, I don't know that I necessarily want her in my household, especially when I have 2 other adult children. Who knows what Gypsy might conjure up in her brain. She's very dangerous because she's very ill. She's the kind of ill that usually doesn't get better. Why would I want that for myself? I've got my own issues and problems already. Do I want more? Do I want those things? Do I want to be a sick, selfish son of a bitch? To everybody in my life? Throw them under the bus when I find it convenient? Do I want that? Why would I want that? What is there to be jealous of? Because she had a baby that she ignores? I had my own, thank you. Who is doing quite well, by the way. What am I jealous of? Ken? No. Ken is disgusting and deplorable just as much as Gypsy, in my opinion. I think they're both gross people. I think everybody in this family are gross people. I don't like any of them. If they were my neighbors, I would move. I would stay... Sorry, that was my cat again, getting a little overexcited. If they were my neighbors, I would move. I would avoid Louisiana just to avoid them. Just to avoid running into them. And if Gypsy moves to wherever she decides to move, Texas, Florida, wherever, I don't care, then I'll move. I won't move there, put it that way. If she comes to California, there's going to be a fight. I'm just kidding, not a real fight. But that would make me very uncomfortable, because she would more than likely, if she moved to California, would move into Los Angeles. But the truth is, if her money issues are as bad as they are, she couldn't afford LA anyway. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. But yeah, I want to avoid her like the plague, because she's dangerous, and I don't want myself or anybody I know getting involved with her ever. She's just a bad seed, in my opinion, and she needs a lot of help that she probably will never get until maybe she is in some kind of criminal asylum or something. That could happen if she does another crime. I don't know if that will happen or not. A lot of people think it will. I think it's very possible, because the more that no one cares about her, and the more that no one is interested in her story anymore, because they see how much of a liar she is, the more upset she's going to be, and the more desperate she's going to be to gain attention. And why wouldn't she try to gain attention in the way that she's already gotten attention? She's gotten this kind of attention since she was a baby for being sick, and now she's got all this attention for killing her mother. So who's to say she wouldn't try another crime just to get people talking again? Because with somebody like her, any attention is good attention, even if it's not good. But for her father to say the people are jealous of Gypsy, you're going to have to break it down, my man. You're going to have to say, jealous of what? What does she have that I would want? A fucked up brain? A fucked up personality? A fucked up boyfriend? A fucked up family? What is in that is enticing? I don't get it. Anyway, thank you for listening. And that is all I've got to say.